for coming. My name is Erin Mutch. I'm the Director of Spatial Analysis and Research Center. I've been at the university for, I guess 7 years now, which is pretty cool. And I'm excited to see that the use of GIS and geospatial technology has really grown in the past year. And if anybody, I don't know if you guys have been watching the news or not, or if you're aware that there's this pandemic. I don't know if you guys know that or not, but all of the information that's being communicated is using maps. And there's a lot that you can do on your own to say, well, okay, I want to look at maybe income versus outbreaks, or I want to look at population density versus outbreaks. I want to look at these things. So that's the power behind GIS, and that's how, hopefully, ideally, we will be able to make better decisions based on spatial distribution of where the virus is, where it isn't, so on and so forth. So that's kind of my opening statement. I don't really have a sense to go through any introductions, but if there's something here that you're like, hey, what about this? What about that? Please don't be shy. Again, this is kind of informal. I just want to get you guys started. And again, Amy, if there's something I missed too, feel free to jump in. So what I first want to do is I'm gonna copy this URL into the chat window here, and this URL is the be-all end-all when it comes to accessing GIS software in the GIS portal. That link is ucmerced.maps.arcgis.com. I'm going to start sharing my screen in a second, and it looks like they changed the it keeps wanting me to update my software. I don't want to do that. I used to be able to share my screen. I'd like to share my screen, please. Okay, maybe try this again. Share screen. Oh, okay, it's down below. Oh, I've been zooming and zooming forever and totally spaced out. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. Can you guys see my screen now?
No.
Let's see. Maybe I have to. Oh, I have to hit the share button. Okay, yay! I did it. Oh my gosh! All right, here it is. So this is our entry point to the ArcGIS portal. What is the ArcGIS portal? This is our starting point to access what's called ArcGIS Online, which is the web mapping portal. I'm doing more of a technical workshop tomorrow on web mapping. I'm hoping as time permits, I'll be able to maybe, I'm going to showcase a lot of the COVID web maps that have been made using ArcGIS. And just because I'm showcasing ArcGIS, that doesn't mean I'm like 100%, this is all that you should use. On, I believe it's April 20th, I'm going to do an open source geospatial workshop. That's going to focus on open source programs like QGIS, R, and other resources available. But this is like this is just a good start. Now, you may have gone to this website and you may not see all the little things that I have, but to log in, if you haven't logged in yet, I'm going to log out to show you how this works. Okay, I'm signed out, and I'm going to go up to the top corner of the screen, click sign in, and for those who might have old accounts, I don't want to have you use these ArcGIS logins anymore, and I don't know if anyone is on this call that do that. I think maybe Amy and I are the only ones that do that. I'm going to get rid of those pretty soon. But we want to do enterprise login. Why? Well, I think we all know our single sign-on. We're all familiar with single sign-on, and all you need to do is do a single sign-on with your UCMnet ID, your password. And I remember doing this in a webinar or in a live workshop, and everybody did this, and their phones all did the duo, bloopy bloop. Here we go. I'm going to approve. And once you're approved, you will see on the top corner here your prefix to your UC Merced email, and your username is your prefix underscore UC Merced. Now, there are some things that I'm going to try to work with OIT on fixing a little bit of our usernames and things like that, because when you go in, it'll show that your name is your prefix instead of your real name. So for example, if I go to organization, now I hopefully see more users here. So we have 677 users. That's pretty awesome. So this shows that this is usable. It's not that hard. And you guys can't see this because I'm special, but these are going to be your usernames. And you might recognize yourself here now. This is what it looks like. So anyway, when I go to this front page, it's kind of like, how do I get started? What am I doing? My first instinct is to go to map. So if you go to map, you're just going to get this blank map, and you're going to be like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? So I'll show you that later, but that's usually what you used to have to start with. With now, when you log in, and you might not see everything that I see because again, I have more tools. If you go to this, I use the Brady Bunch term before it got popular with Zoom, but you get the 9 dots here of the different applications that are available. One of the popular ones is story maps. I'm doing a story map workshop on Friday, which will go in how to build story maps. And if I click on story maps, these are all the stories that I've created that I use for my workshops. So it's fairly extensive. It's pretty useful. But I don't really want to talk about story maps in detail yet. And the Zoom tools are blocking something here. Okay. Okay, float that. If I go back, so again, going back to the kind of the application browser is what they're calling this. So we have something called, so ArcGIS Online is the original stuff. And can we access your story maps? Yes. Most of them are public. And I will show you how to do that shortly, Aaron. Good question. The story maps that I've created for workshops are intended so that when you take one of my workshops, you go through it, and sometimes they're at 3 o'clock and you start to, get a little tired. They didn't bring the pizza yet, and you maybe space out. You can go back to it and review a video or review a tutorial that I went back to. So it's a way to not only go through my presentation, but in my workshops, I do a lot of interactive maps and interactive activities that, again, we may not be able to cover in entirety, but having my story maps public will allow you to do that. And Aaron, one of the first workshops that I had, and I could put these on the featured content. So if you go down below under the tree where it shows the hurricane map with somebody's Sharpie over it, if you click on that, that is my GIS Essentials workshop. That's goes through a lot of basics of data, how to get data. And again, feel free to go through these yourself. I talk about GIS, what is GIS? And then I got this picture of, this is a cartographer's nightmare. I've made maps, like incident maps like this before, and I've had clients like Sharpie them, and I just, have a brain hemorrhage and get upset that that's not GIS. It's not what you're supposed to do. That's like a major faux pas in the cartographer's world. But I put that in there as an example that um, just because you can draw something on a map doesn't make it real. Just because you can make a map doesn't make it accurate. I mean, maps are all lies. I like to tell that to my, new students, that every map is a lie. When have you ever known that 1 inches equal 1 mile? Like, we're lying to you right away. But what a map is, it's a representation of something in the real world, but it's filtered by the cartographer. The cartographer has a lot of power over their audience. And again, I used to teach cartography, so I'm going off on a tangent there. But this is one of my story maps that I created for my introduction workshop. So if you're interested in checking that out, I encourage you to do that. And maybe after tomorrow, I'll add my web mapping one. If you can't attend, you can go through it. And then I'll add the story map one on April 17th. But if there's other things that might be useful, feel free to let me know. There's a lot of students that have created some cool story maps. So if they didn't make them public, or they're not made available, I can have you contact them if you're a historian and you want to see some examples, things like that. So maybe that's one of our initiatives we can work on at Spark, is maybe having a nice gallery for you guys to go through and find some things that can really help you out. But that's a good question. Okay, so back to my front page. Again, I don't love this, but I don't really know how to fix this. I mean, I like the pretty pictures and, the vernal pools and everything. But so the first thing I put up was the GIS Essentials. The second one is the ArcGIS Pro activation and download. What is this? What is ArcGIS Pro? Well, because you logged in using single sign-on to ArcGIS Online. I'm assuming you've done that. If you haven't before, when I showed you do that, you can do that again. There's instructions to do. And in this, it shows, can my computer run ArcGIS Pro? Well, ArcGIS Pro is desktop software that does higher level analysis. Depending on your comfort zone of learning software, say you can learn Adobe Photoshop by yourself, or you can learn things on your own. You may be able to jump into this and it might make sense. Or you have a project, or you have a PI or researchers like, I need you to do a distribution model of my soil samples, and I need to do using GIS. We are encouraging everyone to switch to ArcGIS Pro. Now, if you're like, I don't care, GIS Pro or whatever, we have a lot of users that use a program called ArcMap. ArcMap is something that's been around a long time. It's something that people like me have worked really, really, really hard to learn and to get good at. And we don't really want to have to learn something new if we know how to do it in ArcMap. So we also offer those licenses to UC Merced staff, faculty, students for free if they have used it before. Not that, or they are required to use it for a specific project. Say, for example, we have a lab that has some add-on that connects to ArcMap only, and it's an old version of ArcMap, and you're like, I'm a junior specialist and my professor wants me to use it. That's fine, but I just would encourage everybody to try to move to ArcGIS Pro as much as possible. As it says here, our drop-in hours are Monday through Friday 10. Well, obviously we don't have drop-in hours, but we're going to try to either send me an email or try to have maybe more virtual, just drop-in Q&A sessions for people who might have questions, or if you want to meet with Amy or I directly, we can set up a Zoom meeting. We're here to help. And I learned a lot of GIS by just being thrown in the pool with a couple of cement blocks on my feet and had to swim out. And for me, maybe I learned a lot that way, but in this day and age and with what we're all dealing with, you shouldn't have to struggle that much. So we may not tell you exactly how to do things you need to do, but we want to guide you and give you the support that you need. So again, going through ArcGIS Professional, we have a link to download it. It's 1.5 gigabytes. So if you're in your remote cabin up in the middle of nowhere on dial-up, you might not want to download it from there. So make sure you're connected to the internet with sufficient bandwidth. And again, if there's any errors or anything that doesn't work on these tutorials, let us know. Amy's really good about fixing them. I'm good about creating errors, so Amy's the one that makes things right. So go through those directions, and then when you run ArcGIS Pro, you would log in like you would single sign-on. So it'll show enterprise login, you sign in, and you're good to go. It's not a cloud-based program in the sense that you have to be on the cloud. You need to be connected to the internet to log in, but the software runs on your local computer. And I do have cases where I have researchers, I have people who work in the middle of nowhere. We can set up, it's a request only, but we can set it up where you can run it offline, meaning you don't have to be connected to the internet to use this. So that's something just to keep in mind. There's a lot of confusion about that. Like, I thought I had to be connected to the internet. No, not necessarily. These tools, they're recognizing more and more that not everybody lives in LA or New York and has, awesome internet. That sometimes, or people like us walking in the forest collecting data, there's no cell towers out there. So those are the instruction on ArcGIS Pro and ArcGIS Online Login, which you guys are probably set up to do. A third thing I'll show you in this featured content, and again, if there's something new to add to this to make things useful to everybody, because we want to help, but we also don't want you to have to call us if you can figure things out on your own. I don't want to call Erin if I need it, something that I should be able to get online, right? So as much as we can put online and make available for you, we will. So we have a LibGuide that Amy put together, and this has our general information. Of course, we've got to update our hours, of course, how to book an appointment, how to report technical issues here. Our accounts are free, so you can acquire online through single sign-on. And again, I showed you how to do ArcGIS Pro download. There are some useful information about Story Map Builder. Amy put together information about why you should switch to ArcGIS Pro, and I think I mentioned that before. If you're going to learn new software, don't learn the old stuff that's going to go away and that's frustrating you. Use the newer stuff. You can share data online, there's tools, and so there's more information. And again, we used to charge $100 a license, and I've been fighting this since I've been there, thinking it's really silly to charge people to use this because it costs us money. How many people know what an FAU is here and know what it is and how to get it? It could take like 6 weeks for you to get an FAU and get software. That doesn't help anybody around here, especially, again, if you're in a pandemic and you're trying to map some really useful information, no one has time to get an FAU. So I asked let's try to make this free. And then today, one of the things that derailed me a little bit is that we're going to be submitting a proposal, or I think a grant proposal or a justification to allow everything to be centralized funding, because right now the library kind of absorbs the cost of the software and gives it out. Instead, if it's central funded, that means this is campus-wide use. We have over 600 users, and we should just get this out to everybody, just like email and Microsoft Word and Excel. This is something you should have in your toolbox. Another thing that, so we're building some software guides and tutorials, and a new one we're working on is it's georeferencing images. Now, you may not know what georeferencing images is. Apologize for my English, but a lot of the projects that we've been working on have been in digital humanities, have been in archival work, and I've digitized or scanned, meaning take a paper map, scanned it, digitized it. Actually, Emily's group in the library does a lot of that. I'll take that map and do a process called georeferencing, which means on that map there are points that connect to the real world, and as I have a good control network, I can overlay that map, and then I could put current data on top of it. So if I'm mapping garrisons of and fortresses of China in year 666, I can overlay that to with maybe climate or desertification. That was one thing we were looking at, like how how did the migration change maybe the lay of the land, and how or the courseways of rivers. So you may think, oh, why would I want to put a historic map on there? Well, it could be really useful. Another project we put together was georeferencing Chinatown in Los Angeles. So we had these nice old maps of Chinatown, and what was determined or was viewed that, oh, that's where Interstate 110 went through. So instead of going through a white neighborhood or a rich neighborhood, they totally moved another neighborhood out and disrupted their entire society for this freeway. So these are things that we start to look at and go, well, that's interesting. Why are we doing things that way? Why are certain populations being treated this way, or why are we having these environmental issues here, not here, and so on and so forth. So anyway, um, we're gonna have a um, georeferencing tutorial up and running in the next couple of weeks. But we try to put together information that's helpful. And you may say, hey, I ran into this tutorial, is really useful. We'd be happy to put it up there and share it with everybody, because as much as I would love to teach everybody to be a GIS expert at UC Merced. That's like would be the ultimate goal. But that's unrealistic. And you guys are all smart, and you guys can figure stuff out on your own. And we're just here to kind of lead you to the right resources. Another thing that we run into, and we're going to continue to work on, is where to find data. So there's a lot of data portals that are very useful. A new one that just came out was the California State Geo Portal. I'm going to click on that in a second. But also census. Census data is extremely useful. So the California State Geoportal is actually very new. UC Davis did a good job about 10 years ago organizing data, and they probably lost funding or something happened. But a lot of our students or a lot of our researchers and faculty are like, okay, I love the world, but we want to focus on California. So now you can go into these themes. So the way geographic information works is you have your reference data, your base data. So in this case, California is our geographic reference. This is our sphere of influence. Then you overlay themes. So you can, if you're interested in water research or health or energy, you can go into all of these. And I'm going to go into education out of curiosity and see what's available. So school district offices, school districts, where are the schools? Where are the district maps? Where are areas? Where are the private schools? So this could be really useful information if you're studying charter schools, or you're studying Title I, or maybe food scarcity or food availability. Like for example, I live in an area that is low income. We don't have the greatest internet. We don't have things available for our students to be successful during this time. And one of the things they're working hard on is, one, getting them Chromebooks and hotspots and networks and things that they can work off of, but also making sure they're fed and having meal pickups at lunchtime for students that need them. So you may want to use these type of data to map that out and go, okay, well, where are the schools and where are these things? I'm going to take a deep breath and read Isaac's. Isaac makes a really good point. Um, yeah, the ArcGIS Pro, it integrates, it's integral. QGIS is standalone. The reason why I mentioned QGIS is for those who don't have Windows PCs and who just need to do something, but meaning they need to do some GIS work, but it takes a lot more effort to kind of integrate that into like a portal or into a shared environment. Um, Again, the big difference as it pertains to the discussion, Pro is integrated with online. That is definitely true. So ArcGIS Pro, even versus ArcMap, if I'm doing this a lot with clients, is I'll make a map and for the push of a button, I can push a button and they can see my work online with a URL. They don't need special computers. They don't need anything. They can just see it all. Back in the day, when I had to do this as a consultant, I had to just share PDFs and I would have clients mark up a PDF and then I'd go back and fix the PDF and look at their comments and everything. So things have gotten so much better. Another comment from Fernando, I'm taking spatial analysis next semester. Is there anything I should focus on before preparing myself for the course? That's a really good question, Fernando. We can help you get started uh, with the software. And I would contact your professor, I think it's Josh, or Dr. Veers, I think, and I don't know who the TAs are yet, to see if they're using ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro, and I could reach out to him too. And again, Dr. Veers is extremely intelligent and wonderful and is just, he's very knowledgeable. Um, but that spatial analysis class has an assumption that you have some understanding of spatial analysis to some level. So there are some tutorials out there that I can look through and identify that would be like get you through the basics of GIS. And even worst case scenario, you decide you want to try ArcGIS Pro and he uses ArcMap. It's not going to kill you because you're going to have the foundations of spatial data and what points, lines, polygons, databases, so on and so forth. But yeah, he's, as Veronica said, he is great, very intelligent. He's done some wonderful things for our university. So I'm excited for you to take his class. We supported Engineering 180 last semester, and I believe they used ArcGIS Pro. Oh, why am I spacing out? I'm almost positive they did because we set up single sign-on and all that to get them ready for that. And it was much easier than having to individually set up licenses. So yes, yeah, go for it, Fernando. And again, maybe I'm gonna write down your name and I'm gonna show you towards the end or when I get to it where you can find tutorials and resources. But their focus is on spatial analysis. I believe they do a lot of raster versus vector. So there may be some tutorials for you to understand like the raster data models versus vector data models. Obviously, it's engineering, it's environmental, so I'd encourage you to look into tutorials that maybe focus more on environment. And then I don't know if Maddie Brown is on the call. Probably not, but Maddie was a TA last year for that class. So she may be another resource that might say, hey, this is what we covered and this is what would be useful. But yeah, good for you for being proactive because some people take to GIS really easily and some struggle. When I was studying natural resources or environmental science at Humboldt a long time ago. I think this was 95. So yeah, now we're almost 25 years ago. And I was determined I was going to do GIS. I'm going to be like the best GIS person. I love maps. I'm going to do this. I took the class and I got a D plus my first midterm. I was devastated. Um, it didn't come easy to me. Some of the concepts were confusing, but obviously I am in the position I am now. I did pull my grade up to a B, and then I got a master's in GIS from Penn State with a 3.9 GPA. So I think I did okay, but don't get discouraged if it's not easy right away. I think Amy is probably shaking her head right now saying, yeah, this is really hard, but once you kind of get it's really valuable. All right, good question. Thank you. Okay, so I'm on the California Geo Portal. This is where you can find data. Data is fun. Okay, one page maybe on my to-do list is here in the next corner where I'm like circling where we need something is to link to our training and learning available. So these are pre-canned tutorials. We have our own, and again, we're going to work on our own. It's not like we're trying to be lazy, but the software changes so quickly that I'll go, okay, I actually made a tutorial for the fall and I tried to run it in the spring and they like moved all this stuff around. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated. Um, what's going on? My daughters are doing something upstairs. Okay, so like for example, okay, hello, learn ArcGIS beta. I don't want beta. I just stick to something, guys. Stop. Anyway, and I just saw this today. Like this was not the same this morning. Amy, you can feel my frustration. This was not. I think I was in there this morning showing you something, and this was not there. Anyway, okay, sorry. Again, a lot of GIS is maybe yelling for no reason. Maybe having the feeling that you might want to throw the keyboard out the window. So as normal, you could be like the most mellow person, and this might get you crazy. Again, this is great stuff, but it's frustrating sometimes. So learn ArcGIS at the bottom is getting started. So this is how you can get started on some basic tutorials. Now, ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Pro are the two areas you can get into. Enterprise and ArcMap, unless you're using ArcMap and you want to get up to speed, I kind of ignore these. So there are ArcGIS Online lessons. This one's kind of, it's not lame, but it's dated a little bit. But there's some information that's useful, and this is how to plan evacuation maps with an incoming hurricane. And the overview of this is these blue areas on this map up to the top are coded or identified as vulnerable regions or socially vulnerable regions. And with all of these different variables that we find in GIS, they found that there are certain areas where people are more vulnerable than others. What are those factors? Young children, senior citizens, disabled people, people without vehicles. So there are different categories that go, okay, if I am an emergency responder and something happens, it's not that I'm going to ignore the people that have cars or that have the resources, but I can go there and everybody's fine. They evacuated. There's no one there. And these are lessons they learned in Katrina, by the way. And this is how they came up with the Social Vulnerability Index, SVI. But I'm going to send my resources to people who need the help the most. That makes sense, right? If we're trying to eliminate loss of life, all lives are equal. So if I can go in and help the people that need it the most, I'm going to do that. So this is a tutorial that goes into that. So that's learn. And then ArcGIS Pro also has lessons. So Fernando, you mentioned getting started with ArcGIS Pro. This could be 30 minutes of your time. You can kind of start riding the bike and getting a feel for what this all is. Again, are these perfect? No, but this can get you started and this can get you familiar. We tried last summer to do kind of like a boot camp and a cohort of people going through these resources, but My summer got away from me, so I didn't oversee it as much as I'd like to. Um, yeah, so learn ArcGIS on LibGuide is a good idea. And then can you give info about large data sets? Yeah, let me get to that in a second, because that's a really good question. Um, let's see. And then, okay, learn GIS. I'm gonna click on beta and hopefully my computer doesn't blow up. Okay. Oh, choose an experience. Okay, well, I don't know. I haven't gotten into this as much. This could be a way to find the things that you need. Um, maybe they've heard people go, this is really frustrating. So obviously if you're a new user, go to new user. Professional, I'd probably go here. Student, very useful. Data scientists, this may be really useful for you that are like, I don't really want to learn GIS software, but this incorporates Python and R. And I have to brag because my daughter's going to major in data science, and her first class is at Santa Barbara is going to be R in data science. So I'm excited for her, maybe more than she is, but it's okay. So these are potential resources that you can go into the beta. There's also training .esri.com, and these are more formalized. My joke is it's like buttonology, right? You push a button, here's this button, here's that button, here's that button. I mean, they're again, it's very useful. Um, but if I want to search the course catalog, I just click course catalog. And again, this gets a little like, well, I'm not going to spend $700. So in this section here, I want to do a web course. And I'm going to click maintenance because we're on the maintenance program, so we don't have to pay for it. And you can search by, oh, no, I didn't want to clear my search, but I just did. Web courses, I can sort by, I don't know, I'm kind of cheating, but sort by popularity because I figured the more people doing these, obviously they're the ones that are the most interesting. So again, I went web courses, I'm going to click maintenance, and I'm going to sort by popularity. Actually, why did that do that? Getting started with our GIS, getting started with Pro, Python for everybody. Python is something that is very useful. I never ever will consider myself a computer programmer, but if I have to write code to make my life easier, I will, and I'll figure it out. So Python is I'll call it the gold standard. It is a language. When I started in this, they had this, I used what's called AML, automated macro language, which was like it was just specific to ArcInfo. Then they had something called Avenue, and Avenue was object oriented, but it was their own language. So I learned that back in 1997. And then Visual Basic. So I learned Visual Basic because everything, oh, Visual Basic's the great thing. I spent time learning that, and it was just, it didn't work. And then Python came along in the GIS world as far as Esri at least 10 years ago. And I kind of was like, oh, I don't want to learn this because there's going to be another one that comes along. Hasn't gone away. Since it hasn't gone away and it's so pervasive, I would say spend time on that. Again, these courses are 3 hours, 30 minutes. You don't have to do it all at once. You can pick and choose. But after you finish one of these, you get a nice little certificate that says you completed getting started with GIS Pro. How is that useful? Well, you can put that at the bottom of your resume saying I completed this web course from Esri in these things. And if I am an employer, say I'm trying to hire, okay, say I'm a legislator, or I'm a chief of staff for one of my congressmen. And actually, I met an assemblyman a couple years ago, and I told them what they did. They're like, oh, we need political science students who know GIS. bend over backwards for those. So you may be a poli-sci major, you may never get to take a GIS course because Merced has limited courses and you just want to graduate and it's not a prerequisite, or it's, gosh, I just need to get out. You can chip away at some of these things and show that, hey, I can make a map of your constituents. I can make a map of things that you might find very useful. So that's just one of several examples. So yes, a GIS certificate would be great. Yes, a GIS minor would be great. But if anything, if this is something that you're interested in, just chipping away at a couple of these things will make you heads and above marketable to people that are trying to hire. So again, these are the training seminars. Again, I've done these and gone through them, and then sometimes I'll start one and I'll forget I was doing it. So again, if you have to be self-motivated, but might be very useful. So that is training. So we will maybe put those on the front page so they're easy to find. And then I'm going to click the latest on training. What's the latest on training? There's a lot of COVID-based resources out there and COVID maps. So this is the first one that popped in on the news, and hopefully I got the right one, of the dashboard. And this dashboard, they developed this dashboard when it was in China. So this dashboard here that you might see on the news, you may see, this is using ArcGIS, ArcGIS Online. All the tools that you have available for free can do this. Okay, obviously you need data. Obviously you need some skills. Yes, I get that. But this is an example of what you can do with this technology. So I don't know. It's obviously, it stinks that I almost used a different word, but that GIS becomes really noticeable during times of disaster, during times of social disorder, if you will. My one of my big projects I worked on almost 10 years ago was I was one of the main, I guess, mappers on the British petroleum oil spill in Louisiana. And I mentioned that to students, freshmen, and they looked at me like, what was that? Because they were probably all like 7 years old at the time. But big major oil spill, and my job was to map the plume on almost an hourly basis. And the whole process was really intense. And it was it was interesting to see the difference between a military commanded effort versus a corporate commanded effort. And I don't want to get too into politics because, we don't have all day, and it seems like I'm just chatting away like nobody's business. But I have a tremendous amount of respect for the military and their ability to handle these things, and I sure hope that in this case that we have the right people running the show, and making sure that they're protecting their people, because that's what the military does really well. But anyway, this dashboard is really interesting, and you can browse this on your own too and check it out. There's also, I noticed, uh, not every state has this. I wish California had it. ArcGIS, they're actually, or Esri is actually trying to give these out for free. But weeks ago when I was finding out Florida wasn't doing things that others were doing, I was surprised that they had this. They had the dashboard, but they didn't have, the social distancing place. But you can look at maps per day. You live in Florida, this is more interesting. Okay, I'm going to click on different cases. I'm going to find out information. And this is all driven by GIS. One more, let's see. I'm just crossing my fingers I get to the right one. There's a really great map created by, oh gosh, by Northridge. And they did a statewide one too. But okay, when you're looking at COVID and you're seeing, oh my gosh, it's really bad in New York or it's really bad in these areas, what they're not really doing or what they're not displaying as well is rate. So, for example, Mono County in California actually has the most COVID cases per population. That's a big deal because when you have two ICU beds in your county and you have the highest rate of COVID, that's a problem, right? You would think that's a problem. So when you work with these type of data and when you work with spatial data, to understand that as a cartographer, you have a lot of power over how you communicate information, but also you have to have a sense. I don't want to call it ethics because um, you can persuade your audience in a way that is positive or potentially negative. Um, Map, California. I'm going to go back to the same thing. Okay, so I did have a question about big data, and I'm just trying to find beautiful size interactive. Okay, this is the one. I was going to have this ready for you guys earlier. Okay, so the next question, while I load this up for your information, is dealing with big data sets. Now, it depends if they're raster data sets or vector data sets for one. It depends on your computer, your ability to load data. So you can load, I've loaded huge, huge data sets, but you need a very powerful computer to do that. If you're struggling, and I'm going back to my, old lady days of when we didn't have computers that ran things, we would do things like subset data sets. So, okay, if I have a large data set and I really don't need to study the entire state of California and all of, the 30 different variables I'm looking at, I may just subset it or export out Merced County and look at Merced County individually. So I've also worked with researchers that downloaded NCDF data, those time series data. Again, large data sets really depend on your computing power. If you're pulling data over the internet, I would suggest that if you're working with large data sets, you download those and then work locally, because if you're pulling it over the internet, you could have some you're gonna have things crash, I guess. I don't. I'm going to say this now, and I'm probably going to do something later, and my software is going to crash. And I'm going to say I shouldn't have said that, but my software hasn't been crashing as much as it used to. Now with raster data sets, that's another challenge. Again, you need a good graphics card, and you again, if it's necessary that you use these large data sets, that's fine, but you have to just make sure you don't want to load too much at once. Only use what you need, and then if you don't need you don't need the DEM for the entire United States, subset that data into your focus area, your area of interest, your sphere of influence, your envelope. There's all these different terms that we're using that are used in different areas. Like I know in data carpentries, there's different terms for that. Like it's your area of interest, your triangle, your rectangle of, okay, this is what I'm working with, I don't need the rest. That's not to say you may go, oh, I need that data again. Well, you can load that data again and change up what you're doing. But recently there's been a few researchers that have come to the lab, and they've run some processes that maybe take overnight. There's a few things that I've done that I'm processing lots of data sets using a script. I will run the script and walk away from the computer because I have a really bad ADD habit where I'm going to try to do a bunch of things at once. I will just walk away and try to not touch it and leave it alone. Now, again, it could crash. You could have some problems. And usually there's some errors and some things that you would get either through your script or through the program that will say this doesn't work. But I don't know if I adequately answered your question about large data sets. The desktop software can handle it. The online, ArcGIS Online has a lot of data available. So I'll go to that first before I go back to the cool map, because I'll spend too much time on that because I enjoy looking at it. One thing that I tell people that if you don't have to create the data yourself, don't. Try to find it first. And Esri created something called the Living Atlas. Now, I'm going to say 13 years ago because 15 years ago seems too long. I was at one of the conferences. Jack Dangerman, he's the CEO of Esri, and he's probably going to retire soon. And this is totally speculative. I have no direct knowledge, but my thought is that this software, this portal, all these tools are going to become Microsoft in the next 5 to 10 years. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's what it is. Because I think the CEO is in his 70s, and he and his wife own the company outright. They bought 100+ acres of land off the coast of California and named it after them because they don't have kids. So anyway, that's just my theory. I could be wrong. But that said, he had this vision of something called the Geography Channel, kind of like the Weather Channel. Like you go to this place and you have all the data and you everything else. They called it the Living Atlas. What does that mean? Well, if you're familiar with atlases, right? You look through atlases and books. These are information that's snapshot of 1960s agriculture in California, so on and so forth. Now they have a place to go where you can get data that is what I refer to as authoritative. What does that mean? Well, okay, so say I am interested in, I'm not creative right now. What kind of data should I browse for? Crime. Okay. So say I want to look at crime, and I just did a keyword crime, and there's all these different layers that are available. Now, layers are, again, these thematic layers that you can overlay on top of each other to create a map. Ask some questions like, okay, what's the USA Crime Index? Okay, so I did that under the Living Atlas. If I were to do that in maybe Google or some other source, it shows, okay, map layer by Esri, that's a company. If it said map image layer by Bob's Basement GIS, I mean, Bob may have a great basement GIS. I don't know. But I don't know if I trust his data versus Esri. And it also has authoritative content. That means it's recommended. It's part of the Living Atlas. That is, it's curated. So if you think on the library terms of things, they don't just put any book in the library. They put published books in the library. They put books that have been reviewed and edited and vetted. You can't just put, my 6-year-old daughter's, book on her field trip to Sacramento in a library, right? So that's kind of, the analogy I can think of with the Living Atlas. So that is a place where you would start. And premium content, okay, there are certain content layers that are only available to people with higher level of subscriptions. Luckily, I believe we have the highest level of subscription because we are an institution. They want us to use this stuff. They want us to contribute. They want us to make it better. So in this, it shows the description. They have a great graphic about it. There's additional resources. So there's all the metadata here. And there's also tags. So say you want to create data and you tag it with certain information. So when someone searches for it, they'll be able to find your information. Your information may not be in a Living Atlas, but that's the purpose of tagging. So these actually are pretty large data sets that are available. And you have the ability to, I believe you have the ability to download, I think. Well, maybe not, but there are certain things that you can and can't do with some of these data sets. So another thing that I'm doing is I'm zooming in, and as you notice at the beginning, it was just the states. As I keep zooming in more and more, this is what we call scale dependency. So here's Madera County, Merced County. So your crime index is higher than the national average. Personal crime versus property crime comparisons. So you can build in these nice little I mean, sorry, I use nice little charts when I'm talking about murder and rape and robbery and stuff, not unintentionally, but you can build in charts, pie charts and things like that to communicate your information more than just looking at a table or like a pop-up. That doesn't make sense. And this is where I live. I live in Tuolumne County, so I don't think we have as many murders lately, but yeah, it's kind of interesting. So that's an example of large data sets. Another thing on the Living Atlas is I'm going to try to go back to home. You can look at imagery. So imagery is extremely large data sets. So NAIP, that is by the USD Farm Services, they do that for crop mapping. They have different sources from different, companies, satellite companies that are contributing these data sources. Again, I'm going to start to get in a rabbit hole and play around, so I'm going to try to stay focused. But yeah, jump into these and take a look. Of course, the first thing, okay, we do, and we've been doing this forever, is I'm going to load the imagery, and this is all browser based. And okay, well, this doesn't look too exciting, but I'm going to go to Sonora, and up on the top corner, I can type in Sonora where I live, and this is what we all do. We all try to find where we live. And I'm trying to get out of here. Okay. I can zoom in, see how good the imagery is. Someone's probably thinking right now without chatting, well, what about, can I load my own images up here? It's possible. We aren't perfect at it by any means, and that's one of the things that I'm going to try to work on is setting up a server for us, meaning UC Merced, to have the ability to upload our own imagery. So say you work in a drone lab and you did some really cool research and you want to upload that image to a server and you want to share it. This would be one way of doing it, meaning this would be one way that someone can use it. And it could be internal just to UC Merced, which is fine. And that's another thing. I just want to clarify that just because you put it online doesn't mean everyone sees it. You can be private. This is good imagery. I'm kind of excited. I'm just getting distracted because that's what I do. So you don't have to share your data with everybody. You can have it private. You can set up groups. There's a lot of different options available that could be pretty useful. Okay, I'm trying to find, I think I found my house. Okay, cool. So that's my house right there. Looks like, I don't know, my garden's not in yet, so this was probably like 6 years ago, but anyway. And when you zoom into imagery too, you notice that like sometimes the colors change because some of the images haven't been updated in time. Like this is our track, and I know we replaced this track, and this paw print is something different now. So how do I find the date of the data? That's something that I've kind of struggled with a little bit. Sometimes at the bottom, maybe somebody smarter than me can tell me, but sometimes at the bottom they have the date. I know Google does sometimes. Um, so imagery is fun, it's useful, it's available. And again, I'll run into researchers that don't know that we have this available, or they're so used to working in one area, which is totally fine because that's what happens. That they'll go, oh, I downloaded this climate data source and I'm trying to process. I'm like, yeah, go to Living Atlas. It might be there already, and you can work with that, and then maybe compare it to your data, or you can or you don't have to spend 10 hours doing that. You can spend 10 hours actually doing your research and your analysis, and answering some questions instead of finding data, right? It's kind of like, would you rather grow your own lettuce in your garden and wait 10 weeks, or would you rather go to the store and pick up lettuce? It's kind of the difference. I mean, I like having gardens and I like having fresh tomatoes, but sometimes you need to get it when you need it. Okay, so then other resources available. I'm have too many tabs, like my daughters always complain about. Um, Another thing that is interesting, of course, now they have beta, but what I showed you before were the interactive COVID maps, and there's something called dashboards. And I created this basic dashboard that needs to be updated, but it shows, and this has changed, now it's 700 and something or 6 something. This was something I showed to my administrators of our new ArcGIS account. So how many people were logging in, and then what major are they? So as you can see, okay, environmental engineer, computer science, political science. Good job, you guys. You're in there. Psychology. All of these majors are using the software. So when you go, oh, I don't know GIS, I don't know GIS, nobody knows GIS. That's like I told my husband yesterday, like, you don't have to know GIS, but you can use some of these tools to do the one thing you need to do. You don't have to be the expert. It's kind of like, I tend to make analogies about food, but like Top Chef. Okay, Top Chef, those guys know how to do everything. They can like skin an artichoke and shell an almond or do whatever they do. But not, we don't need to do that. I don't need to know how to shell an almond, but I might need to know how to make grilled cheese. That's all I care about. Well, there are tools and there are things available that will allow you to do that one thing. So it's hard not to it's hard to accept that you don't know everything, believe me. But if you can just get to the things you need to do, don't worry about knowing everything. Just do what you need to do. And if you really want to learn it, great. But even I mean, I have a master's degree in geographic information systems. I've been using this software for 25 years. I don't know everything about this stuff. And this is my job. So keep that in mind that, yeah, it's frustrating. Um, but try to focus in on what you need to do, and try not to get distracted on maybe the bells and whistles that are like, I don't need this. So if you don't need the dashboard, you don't need to do something like that, that's fine. But I just wanted to show an example of, yeah, these are all the different majors that are using GIS at UC Merced. So that's cool. I'm excited about that. There's also something called Insights. Now this, and I'm going through a very speedy overview because these are new tools um, that
Here's
you.
what I found.
No, I don't want. Oh, Siri was spying on me. Um, you can load tables into this now and show, or you can show a map next to a table, next to a chart. So this is an example of some surveys we did with the vernal pools. It's called succulent owl clovers. Um, and we're responsible, the campus, we're responsible for monitoring the flowers on the site every year. these are sensitive and endangered species. So they just want to make sure that the campus isn't killing them. I mean, I know I'm being very basic and I'm sure wrong about those things, but um, so this is a map showing um, the different layers, and I can drag and pull the cards around. And I also created a chart. So this is a chart of the data that we weren't able to survey, areas that were surveyed that had no flowers on them. Again, and look at how cool. When I click on one, it highlights the points. I click there, highlights the point. Click there. Okay, these are areas where we found a ton of flowers. And yeah, I know you're thinking I should zoom in a little bit more, and if I could, again, I don't want to get too distracted, but you get the idea. So this is a program called Insight. So you can bring in spatial data, and then you can also I don't know, I can play around. Okay, that was the count of the flowers on the site, which may not be totally accurate. And I'm just going to click buttons because that's how I learn how to do things. I can move things around. I don't want this chart anymore. How can I change it? Okay, longitude, I don't know. As you can tell, I'm like just randomly doing stuff that makes no sense. But okay, I'm gonna maybe I can make a new chart. Okay, and drag it over. Again, I'm like learning by just not knowing what I'm doing. So, okay, let's see. As you can tell, I spent a lot of time on this demo. Bubble chart. Okay, well, oh, that's kind of cool. Bubble chart. Um, tree map. So yeah, there's different charts and graphs you can do with this. Um, and so this is from, you go to this beautiful start page, go to Insight, or go to the dashboard here, and click on Insights. Another very booming, I guess, application that I'm teaching in workshops more and more is called Survey 123. Well, it's Survey 123. I've worked with some students that say I have to go door to door and ask people if they have solar or not. So it's a form-based data collection program, and I hope Maddie doesn't mind me looking at her survey, but you can actually go in and create you can create a survey form. Let me go back here, my surveys. You can create a form-based survey. Okay, I'm just going to create a new survey here. And I'm going to say GIS Resources. I'm going to tag it as webinar, survey demo. That's how easy this is. Of course, when you create a survey, I'm all for, like, I'm not a big fan of being surveyed after everything that I do. Like, you know, I got toilet paper from Amazon. I don't need them to know how happy I am with the delivery. Like, I just don't care. But you can drag in these different fields. So, how do you feel? And then I'm gonna add another field, the date. How do I feel on this date? And I'm going to add a multiple choice, and I'm going to add ratings. So you can just drag and drop these into a form, and then this form that you create and you launch can be then deployed either online, or again, you can send a link, or you can put it on a mobile device. So say you are, standing in front of the grocery store and you're taking an order for Girl Scout cookies, and of course you'd use paper and pen, but hypothetically speaking, you can say, "Oh, how did you like the cookies? Which ones do you like more?" You can use a mobile device to do that too. So that's survey 123 in a very, very, very quick example. But Do I use this? No, I should, yes. And I will eventually, but again, with Amy sitting in here, there's look at we're just really trying to get up to speed on all this stuff and make this work for everybody. So it's it's there. There may be like, hey, I'm really motivated to make a survey. You can figure this out yourself. Some of you can. Another one is called App Studio. This is more of an advanced program, but allows you to build your own apps. And it's like, well, why would I do it here? Usually it's map driven. Um, I've made apps. I've made apps in the past without the App Studio, with code and other things. But so for example, if I wanted to create a UC Merced experience app, I could build something and have, okay, one of the great things, we don't have budget, time, resource to do that, but wouldn't it be cool to have an app that you can just type in the room of the class that you need to go to and it would navigate you to that class? I know part of being a college student is getting lost on campus, but that would be an example of an app. Another application that I think maybe economic students, political scientists, so on and so forth, is something called Business Analyst. And Business Analyst has access to a tremendous, powerful database. Like when you sign up for if you go to the grocery store, are you a club member? Oh, sure, I'll be a club member and save 20%. Well, you are making a social contract with the company that now they know that Derek likes fat-free sour cream and that Derek is going to buy fat-free sour cream every week and that his demographic may really like this one, or maybe there's a new brand, or maybe they should position it in a different place on the store. So that data is actually collected and available through these type of applications. Now, years ago, I used to use this when I was in consulting, but did you know that 8% of adults participate in yoga? Like, okay, I did not know that. I don't know if I needed to know that, but I didn't know that. So there are tutorials. Again, go to Learn ArcGIS, go to Training ArcGIS. There are tutorials to get you started on this kind of stuff. But really, if you are like a data hound and you're thinking, I really want to look at some really interesting information. I may want to correlate, okay, who's buying Corona beer versus Coors Light or something like that. I don't know. Um, you there's a lot of data that you can utilize here. So, and again, it's not to sound salesy, but as far as I know, it's free. So go crazy if you have time. Um, I think as far as resources, what we have available, all these, I don't know if you can see everything that I can see. Workforce is like if I'm the public works manager and I have 30 people out collecting, data or managing the manholes and stuff. That's something. Quick capture is a kind of a mobile data collection. So like you're riding your bike and you're collecting data on the go. That is similar to Survey 123. Survey 123 is more static. Quick capture's on the move, and you have like 5 buttons of, okay, I'm collecting. You'd be collecting graffiti, for example, like yes graffiti, no graffiti, or are there bars on the windows? Yes, no, stuff like that. If you're driving through a neighborhood, you can do it that way. Not to put Amy on the spot yet, I'm gonna ask Amy here if there's anything that I missed or I should cover, and then leave it open to chat before we wrap up. Again, we're here for you, so hopefully you'll know how to find me. Don't hesitate to send me an email, or we can set up a Zoom one-on-one, because it's frustrating how hard some things are to find, and if you may be like, I'm looking for this data set, I'm hitting the wall, I may know where to find that and help you find that, or help you work with the software. So any questions left in chat?